to burst right through the hedges and mow him down. At the sound of the vehicle squealing around the corner, he let out a sigh of relief and sat there, pushing a shaking hand through his hair. Shit! Sharp pain began to make itself known, and he inspected the damage. His right forearm was scraped, bloody and dirty, but once it was cleaned, it wouldn't be too bad. The laceration across his kneecap might be more problematic. Probing it, he hissed a breath. The cut was nasty, and he was bleeding like a stuck pig. It was a tricky spot for stitches, though, so he'd just have to tend it as best he could. Getting to his feet was more difficult than he expected. He was already hurting all over, getting stiff. Of course, there was nobody around on this quiet street to help him, and he hadn't brought his cell phone. He'd jogged about 4 miles, and his watch showed it was after 6, and he was looking at a painful walk home. He was going to be late to the station. He started off, wincing with every slow step. His body was throbbing everywhere, so to occupy his mind, he tried to focus on what he recalled about the truck. The vehicle was black, completely. Tinted windows that were beyond legal. Thinking harder, he realized it was a Ford, newer model from the grille and logo. He hadn't been able to get a glimpse of the driver or the plates. As for who might hold a big enough grudge to try to run him down? Fuck, he'd been a cop since he was 21. That list would take all day to compile. That was all he had, and it wasn't much. The walk home took almost an hour. By the time he limped up the porch steps, he wanted nothing more than to crawl back into bed and give the finger to this whole day. Instead, he took a hot shower, paying special attention to getting the dirt out of his scrapes and the cut on his knee. It hurt like shit, and he knew he'd feel worse tomorrow. Joy. Once out of the shower, he toweled off and gathered some first aid supplies, then sat on the toilet lid. The arm could wait. His knee was still bleeding like a bitch, and he doused it with antiseptic. Several gauze pads later, the bleeding had slowed, and he closed the laceration as best he could using some wound glue he'd bought at the drugstore a while back. It worked okay, and he bandaged and taped it for good measure. He'd have to watch that wound for infection. The scraped-up arm he couldn't do much for. He hit it with antiseptic as well, downed a couple of ibuprofen, then hobbled into the bedroom and spotted the time. Just after 7. Before getting dressed, he had to make a call. Picking up his cell, he sat on the bed, brought up his contacts, and punched the number. Shane answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" "I'm going to be a little late, half hour or so. I, had an incident." "What kind of incident? What happened?" He could hear the concern in his partner's voice. "Truck tried to turn me into roadkill while I was out running this morning." "On purpose?" "Yeah." "Fuck." Shane breathed. "You okay?" "I'm fine, just moving slow. Scraped my arm and cut my knee after he hit me." "The bastard actually hit you?" His friend barked. "Why the hell aren't you in the ER getting checked out?" "Calm down, partner. Like I said, it's not that bad. I got clipped by the bumper is all." He cut Shane off before the man could get started again. "After I get there, I'm going to file a report so the guys on patrol can watch for the truck. Black Ford." "The one with the fucking dent in the front?" He had to smile. "That'll be the one." "I'm already at the station. I'll give them a heads up so they can go ahead and start looking," he said, an angry edge to his words. "Thanks, man." "You need a ride? I can send a squad." "No, I'm good." The last thing he wanted was to call even more attention to his situation. "All right, take your time and I'll see you soon." Ending the call, Taylor went to the closet and chose an acceptable pair of jeans that were comfortable. Then he lingered over the shirts. A short-sleeved one would be better because it wouldn't rub on the scrapes, but then he'd have to field questions all day from people who hadn't heard about this morning. Debating, he settled on a dark, long-sleeved cotton shirt that would hide the wounds and any dots of blood that might seep through. Once he was dressed, putting on his shoes was an effort. Amazing how fast the body became bruised and sore. Good thing he was going into the station. The longer he sat around here, he might never move again. Downstairs in the kitchen, he settled on coffee and half a toasted bagel. He needed something in his stomach, and